Alright, so this continues the C# programming series, but you're probably wondering why we're looking at Microsoft Paint right now. Microsoft Paint is here to help us with color editing. Uh, One of the things that pretty much from the second, third, or fourth grade most kids know is that there are three primary colors: red, red, yellow, and blue. Red, yellow, and blue mix to make all the other colors, except for black and white. Well, in order to get black, well, you're just going to need to have a black color, and in order to get white, you're going to have to assume that the paper is white. But the problem is that means that there are actually 5 primary colors when you start including those. But that's called pigment. In computers, we use light, and light actually does have 3 primary colors, which happen to be red, green, and blue. You can see over here, red, green, blue. So if I set the maximum values of these are each 255. So if I set blue to 255, you can see that it actually gave me about the most intense blue that I can get out of a computer. And if I set this back to 0 and then change the green to 255, I get about the most intense green color I can get out of a computer. But then you're going to ask certain questions like, well, how do I get yellow? Because what do you add to get yellow? And if you were to take green and red in your pigment colors by paint and mixing the paint colors together, you would end up getting some sort of mucky brown color. But that's not what happens in light. Remember that every color or shade of light that we add together essentially makes the color brighter. So what we're going to do is add half blue and half red. Max those out, 255, and we get yellow. And if we max all of these out, we get white, because we have equal amounts. Essentially equal amounts. If I move this scroll wheel down, you can see the red, green, and blue, they're all reducing to make darker colors. If they are all equal, you have a grayscale. So that's your basic colors. What we're going to do is make a similar thing to make the background of our form change colors based on 3 scroll wheels. Alright. So now on our form, I'm going to need to expand this out. So I have to click somewhere where I get the actual form, which could be the form itself. I'm going to expand it out. And then now, last time we left off in the events section, we might need to click back to properties if you're not there already. So we have our properties window up. We won't be using events very often. Most of the time you don't. But on occasion it's useful. What we do need to add are 3 scroll wheels, or numeric up-downs will do. So I'm going to select one of the numeric up-downs, which is right here, numeric up-down. I added it, and it has in the properties a value of 0, and it should have a minimum and a maximum. Right now its minimum is 0 and its maximum value is 100. I'm going to set that to 255. Remember how the other color in paint went to 255? There's a reason for that. We'll get to it. Alright, so 255. And now let me just go ahead and play this. I didn't do anything with code yet, so this doesn't really do anything. But I can start clicking the up, and you can see it moves faster and faster and grows, and then gets to 255, and it just stopped. If I try setting it to 300 and hit enter, it goes back to 255. If I try clicking up, doesn't do it. Down, does it. Up, maxes at 255. Same thing if I go to 0, it can't go lower. I can click to go up from here, but I cannot click to go lower than 0. Alright. Now, I'm going to copy and paste this so we have 3 of them. Control-C, Control-V, V. So now I have 3 of these. And I'm going to change their names. The first one, we will call it red. The second one will be called green. And the third one, you can probably guess, is blue. You may have even heard the term RGB, like RGB monitors, which essentially meant red, green, blue. Okay, now one other thing we'll do to help emphasize this, instead of putting label boxes here, like we did in the previous one to say that this is the item name, we are going to change the background of these colors. So if I click on red and I look at the properties for it, I find that its background color is set to window. It's using some of the Windows or the system colors. I'm going to change this to custom colors and change it to red. Now I'm going to click over on green and I'm going to do the same thing, change it from system to custom and select green. And then for blue, I'm going to change it again. Remember, I'm clicking the little down arrow here, from system to custom to blue. Alright, so I now have my three colors. And since I set the values, the minimum and maximum of RGB or to 0 to 255 on the first one, on red, it should be set for the other one since I copied and pasted them after I did that. So if I look at these, I see the maximum is still 255. On the blue, maximum is also 255. If you have several controls that are going to have the exact same settings on your form, a lot of times it's good just to make all the custom changes you need to the first one and then copy and paste it as many times as you need to duplicate it. That way you don't have to keep going through and finding all the different settings inside of it and changing them. Now for the red, green, blue background, that made more sense to do them individually because they're all going to be different colors anyway. Alright, now what I need to do is actually change the background color of the form. So when I click on this, I am going to say, first off, we see that it created a method called red value changed. Okay, so let's go ahead and set this now. We're going to say this. Remember what this referred to before? When we had the score up here, I could say this dot score, and it referred to the score that belonged to the class itself. Well, this, the term this, always points to this dot, or to the current object that you're in, the current class that you're in. So I can say this dot back color. And I want to point something out about this. I say this dot, let me get that up there again, back color. It is form back color. This is some stuff we'll get into later, but remember, we're working with a visual form, and what happened here is we still just have a blank class that only has what we put in it, except for the fact this little section over here. We'll get into what this means later, but it essentially inherited a form, meaning that this class puts all our code in there, but it gathers, there's already another object in code called form, and this class has taken on all the characteristics of it. We'll get more into how that works, but the point is that everything that a form can possibly have, even though it's not called out in this class in specific, we have access to by calling this dot. So this dot back color equals, and I'm going to create a new color. I'm going to say color dot from ARGB. Color, first off, is just a special color object. It creates a color that we can work with. And you'll notice it says in the IntelliSense, it represents an ARGB color. Alpha, red, green, blue. Now before, I just said red, green, blue. The alpha means how invisible is it. In other words, how much of the color from the background will show through. Or how little of it will show through is probably a better way to look at it. I hit open parentheses, and this is something called overloading that I'm going to show you right now, where you see it says 1 of 4. When I hit this, IntelliSense says I can pass in a single integer. Or I can press down and I can see that I can pass in an int for the alpha and I can pass in another color. Or I can pass in just red, green, blue, all as integers. Oh, and something else I'll point out. Let me open that up again. You'll also see that red, it's giving additional details. The red component value, valid values are 0 through 255, just like we saw in Paintbrush. All right, so to set this, I am going to say first we need the red value. It was RGB. I'm going to say red dot value, comma. And we can see that I press down to the third of the overloaded options for what the from ARGB method allows. So I'm still wanting red, green, and blue to be passed in. Now red is that numeric up-down field that we created. We called it red. Dot value is the actual number that it is right now. Okay, red, int green, let's go to that, is going to be green dot value. And then finally, blue dot value. So these were much easier to say. I just want to go back and point out that instead of calling them default numeric up down 1, numeric up down 2, numeric up down 3, that wouldn't have made as much sense to figure out what values we wanted to put here. This made it much easier when we called one red, another one green, and another one blue. They're very obvious for what we want. Now another thing, let's see, what is it complaining about? It wants integers. And what are we giving it? Has some invalid values. Red.value. Let's see what type of value is. Okay, it looks like it's a decimal. The first part of this IntelliSense box that's showing up says decimal. Now decimal could have decimal places, so we need to fix that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little thing called casting, where I cast this as an int. It is each one of these values could be a decimal place, could have decimal places. We are telling it that we trust it to convert a potential decimal place into a whole number. Integers can't have decimal places. So since they are actually different data types, it wants us to make sure that we actually understand that we could lose data. We won't be carrying over decimal places, but since we don't care about them, that's fine. All right. So now, red is the only one that will affect this. Let's go ahead and hit play. Drag over the form, and I'm going to hit red. You'll notice it went to black right away. And the reason for that is because everything is really close to 0, and it'll be hard to tell where the red is until we start getting higher up in the values. So I'm just going to hold this, and we'll see it scroll up. And then eventually the background of the form met this. Now, if we change these, like if I change this to 255, that did absolutely nothing. However, as soon as I changed the red, it changed to yellow. The reason for that is red is the only thing where the events are being played. It still paid attention to what the entire values are for every single one of these. So we want to do this exact same method for each one of the other forms, red, green, and blue. So I'm going to double-click green, and I'm going to go back in and double-click blue. And what I could do, I'll just show you this. This is not what you should do. I'm just going to say what we could do. I could copy and paste this into each one, and that would actually work. Let's go ahead and press play, or I'll just press play, and then I try changing the colors. Click and hold. I see the green is going up. I'm going to change, add some blues. Okay, we see it's turning into more of an aqua. Now I'm going to add some reds to go a bit more purplish. All right, or a lavender. All right, so there is our color.